Hello and welcome to another video on Microsoft Fabric. We have got quite a few releases in the month of November 2024 in Microsoft Fabric. And one of the features which got added to Microsoft Fabric is support of SQL databases. It's kind of a transactional databases coming from SQL Server and Azure Legacy, where we are going to get the transaction SQL capabilities inside the Microsoft Fabric. What we are going to learn in today's video. So what I'm going to do in today's video is, first of all, we will understand in details what is SQL database looking at the release notes from Microsoft. After that, I'll showcase you the tenant settings which are required to create SQL database. Once done with that, we are going to create a SQL database in Microsoft Fabric. Now we need to understand the process of replication and the syncing of SQL endpoints. For that, I'm going to create a sample table, and using that sample table, we will understand how the create, insert, update and delete operation works on SQL database and how the replication will happen in case of SQL Analytics endpoint. And then we are going to validate the data in the SQL Analytics endpoint as well as on Power BI using the Custom Semantic Model. Once we are done with the testing, we will understand the various entities of the endpoints which has been created by SQL database and what are the options available on each one of them. After that, we will start working on a full Power BI model for analysis, and for that, I'm going to load the data using Dataflow Gen 2, data pipeline, copy job, and I'm also going to create a date table using the SQL Script. Once we are done with that, I'm going to create a custom semantic model, create a measure on that, create relationship, and we are going to analyze it. So this is going to be the end-to-end flow for the SQL database, which we are going to learn in this particular video. So let's look at the release notes. This is the announcement of SQL databases in Microsoft Fabric public preview. Let's look at the notes and then we will try out this inside the Microsoft Fabric. The SQL Server and the Azure team has embarked on a mission to make building AI apps faster and easier than ever. Announcing the public preview of SQL databases in Microsoft Fabric. This simple, autonomous and secure and optimized for AI service will help you in the era of AI, where 1 billion new apps are estimated to be built in the next 5 years. And 87% leaders believe AI will give their organization an competitive edge. With the operational database coming to Fabric, Fabric is evolving from an analytical platform to a data platform where data layer of AI and Copilot stack. SQL databases in Fabric is adopting the principle that have made Fabric an extremely fast-growing service for enterprise and small businesses alike. With this unified integrated platform, you can build AI apps faster with the less overheads. You are now getting a transactional database, the SQL transactional database inside the Fabric. It means if you want to develop the apps, you will be able to develop it inside the Fabric ecosystem. You don't have to go beyond the boundaries of Microsoft Fabric. SQL database in Fabric enables you to focus building your apps. So basically, you can build the app, it's transactional database. Let's look at the notes further. Deploying and configuring your database only requires a name and the database it's ready to go in seconds. Means in few seconds you can up and running with a database. No need to go through the selections or have deep understanding of your networking, compute, storage requirement. Additionally, there are many integrations and getting started options like import sample data, get data with data flows and data pipelines which are available in Fabric. You can also get AI assistance both inline and in new query editor and in chat with multi-turn conversation with Copilot. You can easily switch to your tools like VS Code and SQL Server Management Studio SSMS, or you can create a GraphQL API which has become generally available. On that day it became generally available in couple of clicks. Of course, since it is built on the SQL Server and Azure SQL Database Engine, it's familiar T-SQL language you also know and love. Let's look at the next item. SQL database in Fabric enables every database to be under source control. It means everything will be source control automatically. Combination of SDK style SQL projects with the source control integration in Fabric means you can commit database objects to Git repository and update database object from the code in the Git repository. SQL database in Fabric land all your data in one lake in near real time for analytics and AI. All data is replicated near real time to open source Delta Parquet format in one lake. When you deploy SQL database in Fabric, you get two endpoints. Endpoint of the database and a SQL Analytics endpoint. that allows you querying the replicated data in one lake. So the data is getting replicated in one lake, and that is the data which is basically you are getting using SQL Analytics endpoint. So you have a SQL endpoint, which is your database, and then SQL Analytics endpoint you are also getting, which is your one lake Delta Parquet data. This unified operation and analytics works without having to move any data. With SQL Analytics endpoint, you can query using data warehouse engine. You can create shortcut to reference data in the one lake and other items like lakehouse, notebooks, and more. Since the data is all loading in one lake, you can ultimately consume the data anywhere in the Fabric. Unified billing with the Fabric capacity model, and that's important for us to understand how we are going to be billed, what is going to be charged in case of SQL databases. Since SQL database is a native item in Fabric, it utilizes Fabric capacity units like other Fabric workloads. So every workload utilizes the Fabric capacity, the CUs. It integrates with Fabric SKU estimator now in private preview. So very recently there is a private preview of Fabric SKU estimator, means how your consumption look like, and based on what we are consuming or based on the consumption, what is the capacity we require. So if you want to participate in the private preview, if you are an organization or partner organization, you can participate in that, allowing customers and partners to accurately access the capacity requirement and select the most suitable SKU. So you can use that to get the most suitable SKU. Compute charges apply only when the database is actively used, and compute is auto scaling, means it only uses the CUs when it is actively used, and it can be auto scaled also. So you only consume what you need. Storage is built separately on monthly basis, and so are the automatic backups. Means storage and backups need a space which will be built separately, which are retained for 7 days, and they are also retained for 7 days. SQL database in Fabric will be free until 1st January 2025, means for till 1st January you will not be charged, after which the compute and the data storage charges will begin with backup billing starting from 1st January 2025. So the space which you are consuming or the CUs which you are using will not be counted till 1st January 2025, is till 31st December 2024. After 1st January they will be counted. Let's look at the few more benefits. Autonomous and secure. SQL databases are autonomous. You can focus on building your AI app. When developing AI application, making right choice and managing database is complex. SQL databases in Fabric enables you to get best performance and availability by default with an autonomous database. SQL database or SQL database in Fabric automatically configured for high availability with the zone redundancy. Storage and compute scale automatically to accommodate the user workload. The database is auto-optimized to the largest intelligent query processing enhancement, while the system creates any missing indexes to improve the query performance. So it is auto-optimized. All data replicated to one lake by default. Finally, the database always receives the latest security update with auto-patching. So auto-patching is also there, while automatic backups are provided peace of mind in case of disaster occurs. You have auto-scaling, automatic patching, automatic backups. Everything which you need is available here. Secure and governed by default, SQL database in Fabric offers a robust security control, many of which are enabled by default, such as authentication via Microsoft Entra and encryption by REST, with the plan for CMK support in the future and in transit with ESL 1.2. Additionally, the permissions are configured at the workspace level in the Fabric are inherited by the SQL databases. So whatever you have done at the workspace level will get inherited, and you can further fine-tune and control the permission. Network security is ensured through full support of private link. Tenant level today, workspace level in future. So at the tenant level, and slowly it will come at the workspace level. Auditing, which will be available in the coming months, will be enabled by default for every new database. And centralized governance with Microsoft Preview enables sensitivity label and enforcement of preview protection policies. Then there are a few examples and the customer feedback is given. Look at this new icon. If you are not familiar what is the icon, this is the icon for the databases. And get started, you can get started with the Fabric trial. And there is a learn module also, which I would definitely like it to point to you, specifically the learn module for the databases. So I'll click on this, control click, so that it opens on the new window. It's already open, but just for your reference, I'll open it again. This is the implementation of operational database in Microsoft Fabric. And this is the learning path which you can go ahead and do it. I have gone through quite a few modules on that. And my advice would be, after you watch this video, please go ahead and try that out. I will give the link of this announcement where you can get this learn module link also. Please go ahead and try that out. So time has come that we jump onto the Microsoft Fabric and create a SQL database and do various transactions. I am on Microsoft Fabric using the Power BI experience, using app.powerbi.com. You can also use app.fabric.microsoft.com and choose the required experience. Once I'm there, I'm going to open my existing workspace, and the workspace which we are using most of the time is 01 GA Fabric. So I'll click on the workspaces on the left hand side and then scroll down and find out my workspace, or I can even type in the search 01-A. So 01-GA Fabric is the workspace which I'm going to open, and once I open it, you can see I have quite a few objects which I have created in this series and all are available here. My request would be to watch out the videos of this series for that. I want to create SQL database, you can also call. But to make SQL database preview work, you need to enable a tenant level setting, and I'm going to first tell you that tenant settings. Go to settings, admin portal, tenant settings, and inside the tenant setting, enable SQL database preview. I have enabled it for the entire organization, but you can enable it for a specific security group or accept specific security group, that of users. Let's go back. I will open the workspace 01 GA Fabric. Let's go to new item, and we are going to go down store data, and inside the store data I'll click on SQL database preview. So let's create a new SQL database. Let me give it as a name, SQL-DB-01. So only name is required, as we have also read into the release notes. And let me click on create. As I already told you, you might get this message, you have reached maximum number of database allowed at this time. Higher number of database would be available in upcoming weeks. So let me go ahead and delete that one database which I've created. So I'll go to the workspace 01-Fabric. Here I've created one, and let me filter on SQL databases. I've created a couple of them. Let me go ahead and delete. I'm deleting one SQL database here and deleting one more. I deleted my SQL databases, and let's try again. 01 GA Fabric, new. Let me create a new SQL database now, plus new items. Scroll down. Inside the store data, I have SQL database preview. Let me click on that. Let me create SQL-DB-001, and let me click on create. SQL database is getting created, and now we have been landed on the SQL database UI. If you click on here arrow on SQL DB-001, you will see DBO, and inside the DBO you can see the tables. Right now we don't have tables, so we will not see anything. And on the three dots, ellipse icon of SQL DB 3001, the three dots, you see the option for refresh and the new query. And same way, when you go to the DBO, you again see refresh. You click on the table, on the ellipse icon, you again see the refresh. You have a refresh icon on the top. Then you have the settings. Let's look at the settings. In the settings, you have the name. You have the description if you wanted to add, location, owner, created by, modified by. Sensitivity label in case you wanted to give one. I don't want to give anything right now. Apply to downstream item is on. It means if you apply a sensitivity label, it will be applied to the items below also. Endorsement. Right now we are just creating it, so it's not required. Once we are done with it, we may promote it, and later we may also do that. We can say, okay, it is a certified one. Connection strings, and there are more than one connection strings here. And if you're connecting to, let's say, ADO.NET, then how you're going to connect it? If you're connected to JDBC or ODBC or PHP or Go, how you're going to connect it. And you have to also pay attention that the database name is a little different than what you usually see. It's not simply SQL-DB-001. It's a little different than that. So when we are going to connect it with SQL Server Management Studio, I'm going to showcase you that you need to give a little different string than what we used to give in past. Then we have restore point. Right now this is just created, and it is also showing an error right now, but you will get the restore point from where you can restore, and then the Copilot experience. So Copilot completions, so this is also enabled, so we can use that. Give editor feedback, next option. Then you have the get data, which you can get using Dataflow Gen 2 and new data pipelines, which you are going to explore. You want to run the query, you can run it from here. Then you have a template for new schema, new table, new view, new store procedure, new function. If you want to create new schema, you just use the template and then you create it. And new table, we are going to do that also. Now, if you want to open in Visual Studio or SQL Server Management Studio, you have been given option here. If you click on this option, SQL Server Management Studio, it's going to give you the server name and the database name. using which you can open it on SQL Server Management Studio. So let me showcase you that. Let me bring in SQL Server Management Studio. So I have now opened the SQL Server Management Studio. Let me go back to Microsoft Fabric and copy the server name. And let's go back to SQL Server Management Studio, click on connect, and I've selected database engine. Inside the database engine, let me give the URL, which I got, the server name, and then the copy database name. There's no option here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on options, and here in the connect to database name, I'm going to give the database name. Once I do that, I will come back to the login, select Microsoft Entra ID with MFA, and then I'm going to use my username and click on connect. I got connected with the database, and it's an empty database right now. And when we go to the tables, you don't see anything here. So now we can open a new query window here. I click new query, and by default, when the schema is not there, it should take the DBO schema. So let me paste on the script here, whether I paste it on the SQL Server Management Studio by connecting to database, or I could have directly pasted it here in the new SQL query. Anywhere I can paste it. I'm going to paste it at both the places. I'm going to run them one by one from either places to showcase you. So these are the few set of statements which we are going to run, and I am knowingly designed these statements so that you can test out not only what SQL database can do for you, you will also be able to test the replication of SQL Analytics endpoint on how it is going to get syncing when you do update and delete. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table, create table, example table, ID int identity 1,1 means start with 1, increment by 1, primary key. Remember, these things were missing in the warehouse. And then the second column is simple name, varchar 100, not null. Both the columns are not null. Primary key is also not null. And I have simple insert statement, insert into the table name, the column. And when I'm inserting the column, I'm not inserting any data into the ID column. Identity column is going to take care of that. And value is Elif. Same way I'm inserting the record for Bob and Charlie. Once done with that, we will look at the table using the select statement from the select star from example table. And we are going to run this both on the SQL Database endpoint as well as SQL Analytics endpoint. After that, we are going to create a Power BI report and check out the data on the Power BI using the default semantic model. Suppose that we are going to update one record. We're going to update the name Alice with the Alice updated, and we will wait and see when it gets updated into the SQL Analytics endpoint. Once we see that in the SQL Analytics endpoint at Power BI, we will come and delete a record, and we will again observe how that passes on to our SQL Analytics endpoint and the Power BI report, which is created on the default semantic model. But before I do that, let me duplicate this tab and showcase you what all things I've got because I created SQL Database. Just like when you create a lakehouse or warehouse, you get additional items or additional entities. We have got 3 entities here, and let's have a look at those. I will go back to my workspace, and inside the workspace, let me filter now SQL Database. And as you can see, there are 3 entities that are created here. SQL Database, the semantic model, and the SQL Analytics endpoint. If I click on the SQL Analytics endpoint and open it, you will be able to see the SQL Analytics endpoint, which is a replication of data into Delta Parquet format. So whatever action you take on the SQL endpoint, they are replicated on SQL Analytics endpoint. You can observe the same schema what you have at the SQL endpoint. And here in the reporting, you will be able to manage your default semantic model, and you can also create a new semantic model. From here itself, we will be able to create the report. So let's bring in some data first of all, and then let's try out creating report. So how do we do that? I already have this script available both the places. Here on the SQL Database endpoint or here on the SQL Server Management Studio, both are connected to SQL Database endpoint. So let me create this table. Usually it takes anywhere from 10 seconds to 30 seconds to replicate the data from SQL endpoint to SQL Analytics endpoint. If you go here and start refreshing, approximately took some 30 seconds, and I have the table now. So what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to insert these 3 values. Let me run the statement, and at the end I have a select statement. So let me use that. So you can see I have 3 rows. We'll go to the SQL Analytics endpoint now. Again, we'll click on these 3 dots, new SQL query, select top 100 rows, and you can see that still it's not got the 3 rows. Take around anywhere from 10 seconds to 30 seconds to get it reflected. So let's wait for that. Now the data is linked with the SQL Analytics endpoint. Let's also manage the default semantic model and add the table there. So I clicked on manage semantic model table. Let me add the example table and confirm. The semantic model has been updated with the table and I will be able to create a report now. Let me click on the new report. And as you can see in the new report, I can see this table. So let me drag the ID and name and let me make ID as non-summarized, convert it into a table visual. So you can see all the 3 data points are available. So now I have all 3 data points, which is available both in SQL Analytics endpoint as well as on my Power BI report. What I'm going to do here is we want to update one of them. So I'm going to update my table and set the name for the ID 1 as Alice updated from Alice. So now I am updating 1 record out of the 3. I updated one of the row. I'll wait for a few seconds so that it get updated in SQL Analytics endpoint. And because I already opened a report there, so I'm going to open one more copy of SQL Analytics endpoint. By that time it get open, we'll also refresh my data. Now let's look at again the rows. Still it is showing 3 rows and the name is still not updated. The Alice is still the name. And as you can see, the data got updated and now I got a new name. Now let's refresh the data in Power BI visualization. And you can see the name is updated in the Power BI visualization also. Now let's go ahead and delete 1 row from the table. Delete from example table with ID equals to 3. I've deleted 1 row and let's wait for SQL Analytics endpoint to get updated. We have deleted 1 row. It should get deleted. So now you can observe that the data has been deleted from SQL Analytics endpoint also. It again took around 30 seconds to sink in, but now the data has been deleted. Now let's look at the Power BI report. Let's refresh the report. And here also you will see only 2 records. And now we can see we are only getting the 2 records. So we have seen an example that how we are doing the operations. So we have created a table. We have inserted the data, we updated and deleted the data, and all these operations are getting synced with the SQL Analytics endpoint. The data has automatically made available inside the SQL endpoint and it's also getting inked in. You don't have to write any code for that. So data is not only replicated into the SQL Analytics endpoint, but also getting managed automatically. Now you have learned how can you create a table, how can you update it and how can you delete the data and how simple it is to get it on the SQL Analytics endpoint where you can analyze the data and how can you create a Power BI report which will have the data available for you. We have created a SQL database and we have understood how the basic stuff like create statement, insert and update works and how they get replicated and synced up with the SQL Analytics endpoint. Now I would like to understand what all data assets have been created and what are the different kind of permissions are available on those data assets. So I'm back on my workspace 01ZA Fabric and here I'm going to filter for my SQL database using the filter on the right hand side. I can see the various entities which has been created here and one of them is SQL database, another one is SQL Analytics endpoint and third one is semantic model and we have seen them in action sometime back. You click on the 3 dots of the SQL database, then you will see option for open which we have already done, which is already open into the another window. You can delete it, means if you don't want this, you can delete. Then you have the settings, very similar to the setting inside, which is having about, sensitivity label, endorsement, connection string, restore point. And now you can see we have a restore point. Earlier and latest both are available. If you want to restore, we can now restore from a particular point. Then you have the copilot. So you have the copilot, which is right now on. If you want, you can disable that. Then we have the favorite, we can mark it as favorite. View workspace lineage if you want to see the workspace lineage. But I don't want to see the workspace lineage, I want to see the item lineage. So I'll click on view item lineage. And here you can see the SQL database. We have the SQL Analytics endpoint and using the SQL Analytics endpoint, we have a semantic model. Semantic model is dependent on SQL Analytics endpoint, is dependent on SQL databases. Click on cancel, again click on 3 dots and we have view details, view the details and this is very similar UI you might have seen. Open the warehouses, then you open the semantic model, very similar and again lots of options are available here which we will explore later. Then we have options like move to a folder, open in Visual Studio Code if we want to open it, open in SQL Server Management Studio which we have already seen. If you click, it will give you the connection string and the database name which you can use in SQL Server Management Studio. And further, let's explore the option. You can refresh the git sync. If we have not, I have not enabled the git, but if you have enabled, you can refresh the git sync status and you will get that status. Open the performance summary, really important. You will be able to find some performance stats, and let's understand these stats a little bit. Right now it is doing the consumption, 0 vCores. Right now nothing is in use because for some time I'm not running anything. User corrections, right now 0. Requests per second, 0 right now. But you can see in the past we have done some requests. Here also you can see in the past we have done some requests. And then block queries, nothing has been blocked. Allocated size is 32 MB and automatic indexing details are there. Right now no automatic index have been created so far. Then you have restore databases. You can restore a database. So you can give a name. A new database will be created in 010 Fabric workspace, and from point in time, earliest restore point, latest restore point you can give. So from particular point in time, you can restore the data into a new database. You click on 3 dots. Manage permissions if you want to assign it to the set of users or share again. Both of them gives you flexibility to assign it to the different set of people with different permissions. You can give read all on the SQL database, read all on SQL Analytics endpoint, read all on using Apache Spark, build reports on default dataset. All these permissions can also be given along with the read all data. Then you have the semantic model. Again on the ellipse, the 3 dots, we have a lot of options. Explore this data if you would explore it. Analyze in Excel if you want to analyze. Create report means the Power BI report. Auto create report, again auto creating the Power BI report. Then create paginated report. This is right now under preview. We can directly create a report on the Power BI service. Security, the RLS, right now it will not work because we need to create roles before that. Then we have the settings, the various settings, the query cache, refresh, server setting, Q&A, etc. We can explore. Then on the 3 dots, we have manage permissions. We can manage the permissions for this one. We can assign it to different set of users. Then we have workspace lineage or item lineage, which we can check it out. Then for the SQL Analytics endpoint, again, we have a lot of options like open, we can open it. Settings, we can check out the settings. Now these settings, when you see about sensitivity label, this sensitivity label is for the SQL Analytics endpoint, not for the SQL database. Endorsement, again for the SQL Analytics endpoint. SQL endpoint, this is a little different than your SQL endpoint. If you can observe a difference here, there is no database name here. The database name would be SQL-DB-001. And then the default semantic model, whether you want it into sync or not. So right now by default semantic model sync is off. And that's the reason why when we created the Power BI report in the past, we actually manually added the table. Using manage default semantic model. Then you have the options like, view lineage, workspace lineage, item lineage, which we can explore. Manage permissions, again, whom we want to give access. Open in Azure Data Studio. So we want to create a new Power BI report or analyze in Excel using the semantic model. Explore this data, paginated report, and copy SQL. These are the various options we can explore. Till now, we have explored the creation of SQL database, how the various operations get replicated on SQL Analytics endpoint, and we have also seen various permissions which are available on various endpoints of the SQL database. Now, time has come that we use Dataflow Gen 2, data pipelines, copy job operation to bring in the data onto the SQL database. We will also create a date table using the SQL script in this process. Again, open the SQL database by clicking on it. I am here on the SQL database and I want to get the data using Dataflow Gen 2. I want to get the data using Dataflow Gen 2, so I'm click on Get Data, New Dataflow Gen 2. And the reason I'm using this option because in this case, it will directly by default set up the destination at SQL database. I don't have to do it explicitly, but for our reference, I may go ahead and showcase you how do you set up in case you don't have that. So click on New Dataflow Gen 2. So Dataflow Gen 2 has opened. It has opened with a little bit of error, but what I'm going to do here is, any case, I would like to get the data. So if you remember on my GitHub, I have this Excel file. Case data used for fabric.xls. I'm going to use it. I've already opened it. I'll provide the link into the description. I will go ahead and right click on the raw and copy link. Get the data from here. I'll go back to my data flow and rename it first of all. By clicking on the name Dataflow 18, I'll call it load data to SQL equal DB. Enter and it will save. Now let's get the data. To get data from the GitHub, we have to use the get data option. And inside the get data more, and we need to use the web API option. So if I come to the API, And if I give the URL, because I have already used it, it will go to take that particular URL. But in this case, you don't need any kind of credentials. You can simply use the anonymous authentication and can use it. I'll give the URL. It has already picked up the existing connection. Let me click on next. So I got my tables. I'm going to load from here the customer table and the geography table using the Dataflow Gen 2. I'm clicking on these two and let me click on create. So these two tables are loaded here. As you can see, the destination is already set to the SQL database or as the SQL database for both the tables. So customer you have seen. Now if you click on geography, you can also see that. But let me do one thing. Let me showcase you how to do that. So I'm going to cross on one of them. I am removing the data destination from the geography table. And let me try to add it. I can use the plus button here on the bottom right, or I can also use one in the middle of the screen. You can use any of these options and click on SQL database, SQL database, connection detail. Maybe first time it may ask for a login. So do that. You are single sign on and then search your workspace. In my case, it is 01ZA Fabric. Inside that workspace, find out your SQL DB. Click the SQL database. The table name, I'm keeping it same. Next. And then you can change the data type if required and click on save setting. So in this manner, you are able to do that. Here there are default settings, so it's showing the exclamation icon. Here I have done some settings, so it is not showing the exclamation icon. We will right now want to keep both of them. And once I'm done with my Dataflow Gen 2, as you know, we can publish it and we have two options. We go to this arrow near to the publish. We can use publish now or publish later. As usual, we want to do publish now, which can be done by directly clicking on publish or on the down arrow publish now. So let me click on publish. It will publish the Dataflow Gen 2 and will also load the data. And to monitor that, I also need to bring in the Dataflow Gen 2. So let me add Dataflow Gen 2 by adding that to my filtered items. And if I scroll down, you can see right now it is getting published. And once it is published, you will see a time here and data will get loaded. So there's a two-step process. It gets published as well as the data get loaded. So now it is published and now data is getting loaded here onto my SQL database. I have loaded only 2 tables right now. And as you know, my schema has 4 tables and I'm going to load them one by one. Data is already loaded using Dataflow Gen 2. It has finished loading. So let's go back to our SQL database and refresh the tables. So I can go back. I can click on the 3-dot ellipse and refresh the database or the schema. Let me do using the database. I can see my customer table here and I can also see my geography table. So data is loaded for both customer and geography. We can now check the SQL Analytics endpoint also. So let's go ahead and refresh the SQL Analytics endpoint. So I have jumped onto the other tab where I have opened the SQL Analytics endpoint. Right hand side top, you can see it's a SQL Analytics endpoint and it's refreshing right now. And you can see the customer table as well as the geography table also appearing here. We can click on one of them, right click, new SQL query, select top 100 rows to view the data. We can see the data now. And as you might have observed, there is a unique identifier. What we are going to do here is we'll continue here on the SQL database endpoint. And now we would like to bring in one more table. And this time we are going to use data pipeline for that. So click on get data, new data pipeline. Again, by doing so, we will be able to save the destination part of it. But remember, if you cancel the copy activity, you will not be able to do so. You have to manually set up the destination. So let me give here. I'm going to name this pipeline as SQL _DB _node _sales. I'm going to load the sales table. Click on create. It will start the copy activity. So now I need to select a source, and the source which I'm going to select is I'm going to bring this data, the sales data again from my GitHub account. So for that, I can click on the view more. Now the view more which I need is this one, the top one. These options have changed over a period of time. So you have the new sources which are here. And if you want to use the one lake sources, you have some options available here. I'll click on view more, the top one. Then I'll go down and here I have an option for HTTP, which I'll click. And again, I'm going to give the URL which I got from the GitHub for the same Excel. And then we paste that. And the moment I do it, it will recognize this URL because I've used that in the past. And I'm going to click on next now. And then we got to the next screen. And on this next screen, I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just going to keep it as is and press next. Now this is the screen where it's going to analyze the data. It may take a little bit of time here to, give you the access So don't just simply click on next in hurry here on this screen. Just wait till the time it enable the file format, the column delimiter, etc. And then you take the action. Now it got enabled for me. I'm going to choose the file format, which is Excel. Now the compression type is not there, index. Now I have 4 sheets. Second last sheet is the sales sheet. So 0, 1, 2. So I'm going to give 2 here for the sheet index. Then I'm not going to give a range. I'm going to mark first row as header. The last option I'm going to check here. And now I will click on the preview data to preview the data. This is my CS data. So it's at the sheet 3. I am going to get that and it's going to show me the schema, and right now it's reading everything as string. It means when the mapping is getting created, I need to make sure I give the correct data type. Click on the cross, come here, press on next. Now choose the destination. Ideally, it should have chosen one destination for us. And here in the one lake catalog below, or here when you go to the one lake, you should be able to see SQL Database. You use the SQL Database, SQL-DB-001 in GA01 Fabric. I'm going to choose that. Load into new table, and once it loads the mapping, it'll go ahead and correct the name. It will enable by that time. This is sales table, so I'm going to name it as sales. I'm going to change the data types. So I'm going to make order number as big int, item ID also as a big int, sales date as date, or maybe date type 2. Then delivery date, again let's choose date type 2. Then customer ID is big int, TT ID is again big int, quantity is decimal or double. I'm seeing decimal here, so I'm going to keep, and we can give the decimal places here. I think I'm going to keep it same. Price, I'm going to keep decimal. Cost, decimal. Let me type and do it quickly. And discount percentage is also decimal. Some of them are like basically like quantity is also a big int only. We can do that. And then we can press on next. We can use start data transfer immediately, or I can uncheck to showcase you what activity is going to be created and how to check the mapping, etc. in case there are some more modification required. So I'm going to uncheck data transfer immediately and going to click on OK. We click on OK. As I do that, you see the copy activity. Click on that. You can see the source. You can see the destination. You can check out the mapping. In case you want to change anything, you still have an opportunity to do that. The dates, it's showing some truncation. We have to see once the data get loaded. Does it load it properly or not? So save this. Under the home tab, there is an option save. Then validate. Everything is fine. Let's run it. Now we are using data pipelines to load the data onto the SQL database. So data is getting loaded to the SQL database using data pipeline. Already in progress. Data is successfully loaded. Let's look at the input and output. So let's click on input. The Excel source, HTTP headings, all these details are there. And then there are certain details about the database, etc. Let's go to the output. Click on output. And here I'm interested in row Z, row copied, which is 30,000. And those who are with me on the channel for some time, you know I have 30,000 rows in this table. So let's go back to the SQL database. And I'm trying to use the shortcut on the left hand side here to go back to there. So I'm going to click on that. And once I'm back, let me refresh the tables. And I can see the sales table now. Again, we want to see some rows. So right click on the sales and select 1000 rows. And you also see the create script, the drop script, create API or GraphQL and a refresh. So we'll select the 1000 rows. We are only interested in that right now. And you can see the data types are correctly mapped. We got the dates correctly. We got the quantities and these things correctly. Now time has come. This is the SQL database. And we would like to see what is happening on the SQL Analytics endpoint. So let's go back to the SQL Analytics endpoint. And in the SQL Analytics endpoints, let's refresh the tables. We got the sales table, right click, new SQL query and 100 rows. We have 100 rows option here. We got the rows here and data types are a little better here, isn't it? Look at the customer table. I'm only worried if the data types are not same, it may pose challenges. The data types are correct here. All the tables we have loaded so far are correctly replicated into the SQL Analytics endpoint. SQL Analytics endpoint in sync. Now we want to test something which is not mentioned in the documentation. Can we make the copy job work? It also came very recently. I have a video on that. You can go ahead and watch that. So let's jump onto the another tab, and from that tab where I have already opened the GA10 Fabric workspace, click on new item, click on copy job preview, and we will say copy to equal DB. I'm giving the spaces. It does it take. Click on create button. This is a new copy job which I'm trying to create, and this I'm going to create from my Azure SQL. I need to give my Azure SQL detail, and because I have already given my Azure SQL details, it's going to take that. To the data source is my Azure SQL database. server, the database name is demo. It takes the already existing connection. Let me click on the next. It may take little time to find the tables. I would like to add item table from here. Those who are continuing with me on the channel for some time know that I am missing item table in the current schema. So we are going to get that once we are able to get all the tables. We got list of the tables. Let me select DBO item by clicking on the checkbox. This UI is very similar to the Power BI UI. If you click on the table name, it will not get selected. It will only show preview. But if you select the checkbox, then you will get the table preview as well as the table will get selected. Now click on the next. There is no SQL database. Even if you scroll down here, you don't see that. If you are not seeing the SQL database option, how we are going to get it? Now to overcome that, I'm going to use that as your SQL database option. Go back to the SQL database and get the connection detail using the option open with SQL Server Management Studio. Let me click on SQL Server Management Studio option, copy the server name and give it inside the server option. Go back, copy the database name and give it into the option database name. I'm trying to open it as an Azure SQL. When I go down in the authentication, I'll use organization account and let me open with my organization account. It has opened a pop-up and that pop-up I'm trying to sign in. Signed in, let's wait. Is the method going to be a success or not? You are currently signed in. Let's press on next. Okay, it's saying the table mapping is dbo.item, edit column mapping. That's really important for us. Mapping has opened and we can change as per need, specifically the worker size. We can change it as per need, but as of now, I would like to keep it same. Full copy versus incremental copy. I have explained that in details in my previous video. Please watch that. Full copy means I want the complete data every time. Incremental means I want the new data from next time onwards. So I would like to schedule and bring the incremental data. So I'll click on incremental copy. Remember that I need to give an incremental column, which is item ID in this case. This is append only scenario. I've already explained you how this work, the copy job works. So I'm not going to explain those details here. Please watch that video. I will also provide the link into the description. Press on next. And do I want to use start immediately? Yes, I would like to use start data transfer immediately. Even when in case it error out, we will go and figure it out. It creates an automatic schedule which run every 15 minutes. And because of that, I may incur charges at my source when the data is getting queried. So that I don't need as of now. So I'm going to disable that automatic schedule. Let it run. And while it is running, while it is in progress, I'll click on the schedules and switch them off by applying it. It will become one-time initial load, but in case I need, I can enable it and can change the frequency as per my requirement, like hourly or daily or weekly or monthly, depending on my needs. It's refreshing. You can manually refresh using the option on the right top if you need. Let it refresh completely. It usually takes 50 to 60 seconds. Refresh is complete now and we got our item table into the SQL database. So let's go back to the SQL database and check that out. I'm back on the SQL database tab and let me refresh the tables. We got the item table. Let's right click, select 1000 rows. Here we get it. And we have the data here. Let's go back. Is the syncing happens on the SQL Analytics endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh. We got it there also. Right click, select 100 rows and let's look at those. Same number of rows means syncing or replication is working fine. So we have now our schema, we have a sales table, we have item dimension, we have geography dimension, we have customer dimension, but there is something missing. Yes, date table is missing, and for that we are going to use the SQL statement for my Medium blog, which I written a long time back for Power BI direct query date table in SQL Server. Now we are going to use that. So here I have explained you what all columns we need. We're going to take this create table statement from there, and then there is an anonymous procedure, and then there is a with generate series. And I already checked out that the current version of Azure SQL or SQL database does not support generate series. So we have to load data using the anonymous procedure. So first we are going to use the create statement and then we are going to load the data using anonymous procedure. So I'm going to go to the SQL database endpoint, new query, and let me create this table. Table is created very fast. You look how fast it is. And now I can use this anonymous procedure to get the rows I require in the date table. But before I do that, I need to get the idea of the date range. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sales table and select 1000 rows. I actually don't need 1000 rows. I'm going to change this query to return me min and max of the sales date so that I can identify what date range I need for my date table. I usually have 2 years of data in my sales table, so only identifying the max sales date can also help me in getting the date range. So let me change this query to get me the max of sales date from the sales table. So the max date is in 2020. It means I have data from 2018 to 2020. So let's get that procedure to load the data for this date range. I will change the date ranges in this anonymous procedure. So let me start with 2018-01-01 and let me change the end date to 2020-12-31. So I'm going to load 2 years of data in my date table using this anonymous procedure. So let me click on run to load the data into my date table. So the 2 years of dates have been loaded, and I have done the similar exercise on Azure SQL and SQL Server. Seems like this is much faster than that. So the date table is loaded. Right click on the date table, select 1000 rows. We can see the data pretty quickly. Is it synced or replicated in the SQL Analytics endpoints? Let's check that out. Let me refresh the tables and you can see the date table is already available here. To me, it seems like replication is working relatively fast compared to what we were getting previously. Everything I need for analysis is available here. The sales fact, the date table, the customer, geography, item tables are available. So I'm ready to create a semantic model now to analyze my data using Power BI. And as we know, the custom semantic model is much more powerful than our default semantic models. So we are going to create a custom semantic model here. So let me go ahead and create the one. So I click on reporting, new semantic model, which is going to give me the custom semantic model. Let me call it as SQL DB schema. I'm going to create it on 01GA Fabric only. Let me open all the tables, customer, date table, geography table, item table, sales table. Click on confirm. If there is no pop-up blocker, then it will open a new window in which it will open your new custom semantic model. Now it is opening the new custom semantic model. So the custom semantic model has been created and we got the custom semantic model here, and in this custom semantic model you can observe that there are certain key columns which has been created in the SQL Analytics endpoint, which are for the key reference, has already been hidden and rest of the columns are visible. Now let's go ahead and do some little renaming here. As usual, we can do a little bit of renaming and everything. So we can open the property pane on a particular table. So let's say I can make this as a title case, amount, click on item, I is item again in title case, I capital. In geography and customers are pretty much sorted out, and we create relationships. So city ID and city ID need to be related. Sales city ID to geography city ID. Many to one. That's correct. Single directional relationship. Okay, done. We have item ID below the tables. So item ID to item ID. Again, many to one, single direction from sales to item. That's correct. And those of you might be thinking why I'm doing so fast, because I've done this exercise many times. I channel, these are the common tables which I create. And then we will go to do the custom ID, join custom ID to custom ID. Many to one, single directional from sales to item. And then I'm going to join the sales date with the date of my date table. But before that, okay, let me click on 3 dots of the date table. Mark as date table on date column date. I'm marking it as a date table. Let me drag sales date on the date of the date. Again, the same single directional relationship we are going to create. I can do a little bit of renaming and everything, but right now I'm not interested in all those. Just wanted to showcase you creation of one measure. I'm going to click on the sales table, and there I'm going to click on new measure. I'm going to create a measure, gross. And gross is nothing but sum x, sales, quantity, multiplied by price. There are a few other measures which I usually create in my analysis, but right now I'm leaving those part. Just with one gross measure we are trying to do that. A model is created, it is auto saved as it is already written, it's automatically saved. We should be able to go ahead and analyze the report. So let's click on new report and create a Power BI report on the data which has been replicated from the SQL database of Microsoft Fabric, the transactional database replicated into Delta Parquet files, and we are trying to use those to create our Power BI report. Remember, in the past, if you have your database in the SQL server, you have to import it on the Power BI. You have to make sure that you create incremental logic, you keep on getting the new data, and the data is imported in Power BI, it's duplicated, but that's not required here. So Power BI report is open and I want to create a visual, my favorite visual, brand wise sales. So let me drag item brand into the canvas and let me drag the cross from the sales table. And looking at the number, I can tell you this is correct. We have seen this number many times in the past. So what we have done here is we have brought in the data using different methods onto the SQL database, and we are able to create a report on the data which has been replicated and made available on the SQL Analytics endpoint and semantic model. And using that, we are able to analyze end-to-end analysis on the Fabric using SQL database. We can save this report so that we can refer it in the future. So let me go ahead and do that SQL DB report. It is not directly on SQL DB, it's on the replicated data. Now you can create as many complex report. You can do everything, those calculation groups, difficult measures, everything what I have told you in the past in this series. You can go ahead and experiment that out. So go ahead and try that out and do let me know what else you want me to cover in this particular series. Thanks for watching this video. Thank you. Keep watching, keep asking questions in comments, subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so that you can get notification for new videos. Thank you.